In many cases, applications will need environment variables in order to obtain information about an application's environment configuration. In these cases, we'll need a way to pass environment variables into a container. And there's a couple ways to do this with Docker. Now, first off, environment variables exist on your local machine as well. For example, I can type in the command echo $user, and it'll give me the username on my local machine. Now, this is an environment variable because we can store the variable in the environment. I can also export an environment variable, such as export test underscore var equals hi. And if I do echo test var, we'll see that it'll print out the value of that environment variable. Now go ahead and navigate to the environment variables directory in the code repository and take a look at this node file. It's a little script, and this script is called announcement.js, and all it does is it prints out a little message with the variables announcer and message. But notice that these variables are obtained through environment variables, and that's what process.env.environment variable name is. Now notice that if the environment variables don't exist, they will default to particular values. So this is pretty handy because we can change what this message is depending on the environment that the script is running inside. Now, in order to run this in Docker, we'll have to use a particular flag called the -e flag. So let's go ahead and try this. We're going to run the script. So first off, I'm going to run it without any environment variables. So I'm going to do docker run -it. We're going to mount this volume pwd, which in itself is an environment variable, user source app. We're going to change the working directory to user source app. Run this in node 6, and we're going to run node announcement.js. And notice that it'll run, this is a message from Docker, there is no message. Now this is the default value because we didn't provide any environment variables. Now let's go ahead and pass an environment variable along. I'm going to define message to be, I am making your environment better. -it, -v, again, pretty much everything we were doing before. So user source, /user/source/app, -w user source app, node 6, node announcement.js, and it should run the message. And notice that the default message is now replaced with this message, I'm making your environment better. Punny, I know. We can also pass multiple variables by specifying the e flag more than once, just like how you would with if you're specifying more than one data volume. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do -e message equals I am making your environment better. And we're going to specify announcer this time, and that's going to be your Docker overlord, and specify it-v pwd. Notice I separated those environment variables onto their own lines just to make it a little easier to read. Node announcement, there we go. And notice that now the announcer was replaced as well. So this is pretty handy. It allows us to pass in different values, and then our scripts can then interpret the environment however they see fit. Now notice that order matters in this case. If we were to include these environment variables, say after this node announcement.js, it actually wouldn't work. And that's because note that when you run docker run, all of your options, and this includes data volumes as well as environment variables, should go before the image and the command that you specified. So that's just a little gotcha because I have had instances before where my environment variables weren't showing up. That's because I put these variables over here after the command, so they weren't being passed into my container. Excuse me. And another thing you can do is you can pass in a whole file of environment variables. We have that over here in the .env file. in that repository. Note that I declare the environment variable values and names, each on a separate line. I can import this entire file into my Docker container. Now the benefits there are that if you have environment variables with keys or sensitive values, you don't have to make those present inside of your Docker command. So I can go ahead and run docker run. We're going to pass in this entire file by specifying another flag separate. It is --env-file. We're going to specify the path of that env file, which is going to be the current directory.env. And then we'll specify everything else. So -v, pwd, user source app -w, switch to the working directory, node 6, node announcement, and notice that it'll run the same script. It'll take all of the values in the environment variable file and then print out the message with those appropriate variables. And boom, that is environment variables in Docker.